Grand Curator Zextal adjusted his ceremonial robes as he led the delegation through the Museum of Primitive Technologies. His bioluminescent patches glowed with pride as they approached the centerpiece of his latest exhibition, a massive human warship suspended in a containment field. "Behold," he announced to the assembled dignitaries, "the HFY Phoenix, a perfect example of how lesser species attempt spacefaring." His tendrils waved dismissively at the angular vessel. Note the crude armor plating, the inefficient engine configuration, and the barbaric weapons systems. The assembled aliens, representatives from the galaxy's most advanced civilizations, chittered and hummed in amusement. The ship looked absurdly brutal compared to their own elegant vessels. Where their ships were smooth and organic, this human vessel was all sharp angles and exposed weapon mounts. "How did you acquire such a specimen?" asked Ambassador Vril, her crystalline form refracting the museum's soft lighting. "Found abandoned in the outer rim," Zextal replied. "No signs of battle damage or catastrophic failure. They simply left it, probably realized how hopelessly outmatched their technology was and abandoned it." He gestured to various features with his field pointer. "Observe the primitive radiation shielding, the wasteful heat management systems, the redundant backup systems taking up valuable space." Clearly, they had no grasp of proper engineering principles. The delegation followed him around the vessel, their own advanced sensors confirming what seemed obvious. This was a relic of a species that barely understood spacefaring technology. The ship's systems appeared to be built to withstand ridiculous amounts of punishment, as if its creators expected it to be constantly damaged. "Most amusing," noted Supreme Engineer Tex, his mechanical eyes whirring as they analyzed the vessel. "They appear to have designed it to continue functioning even when severely damaged. Such inefficiency. A proper ship simply shouldn't be damaged in the first place." Zextal preened at the response his exhibition was receiving. "Indeed. Note how they relied on physical armor rather than proper energy shielding. And these weapon systems, chemical propellants, and crude mass drivers rather than elegant particle beams." The tour continued, with each new feature drawing more derision from the assembled dignitaries. They mocked the oversized life support systems, the massive cargo holds, the thick internal bulkheads. Everything about the ship seemed to speak of a species that approached space travel with all the sophistication of cave dwellers. None of them noticed the ship's power core maintaining a barely detectable idle state. None of their sensors detected the quantum-encrypted transmissions pulsing through subspace at intervals measured in years. None of them understood why the ship's systems were designed to operate even under conditions that would render their own vessels useless. Deep within the Phoenix, in heavily shielded chambers that registered as simple storage spaces to alien sensors, rows of cryopods maintained their precious cargo. The ship's AI core, operating on minimal power, continued its eternal vigil. In its memory banks, it held its final orders. Wait until needed. Protect the crew. When the time comes, show them what humanity can do. The aliens continued their tour, laughing at what they saw as primitive design choices. They never questioned why a supposedly abandoned ship had such comprehensive internal security systems. They never wondered why its computer systems resisted all attempts at deep scanning. They were too convinced of their own superiority to ask the important questions. In the darkness of space beyond the museum's walls, the first signs of an approaching storm were appearing. Signals were going dark. Colonies were falling silent. Something was coming. Something that would make the galaxy desperately need the very capabilities they were now mocking. The Phoenix waited. Its systems remained ready. Its crew slept. And in its AI core, a countdown continued, not to some predetermined time, but to a set of conditions that would indicate its services were needed. The galaxy thought they were displaying a relic. They didn't realize they were housing a sleeping giant, one that represented humanity's approach to warfare. Be prepared for the worst. Build to survive. Never give up. Never abandon your people. The mockery would continue for now. But soon, very soon, the laughter would stop. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council was not going well. Grand Curator Zextal's bioluminescence had dimmed to an anxious flicker as reports continued to stream in. "Another colony gone silent," announced Defense Coordinator Vril, her crystalline form clouded with stress patterns. "That's the 12th in 2 standard cycles. Whatever this force is, our standard defenses are proving inadequate." The council chamber erupted in nervous chatter. Their mighty civilization, built on elegant technology and sophisticated defense systems, was facing something unprecedented. The enemy ships, if they could be called ships, simply absorbed their most powerful weapons. Particle beams dispersed harmlessly. Quantum disruptors had no effect. "How are they defeating our shields?" demanded Supreme Engineer Tex. "It should be impossible." "They're not defeating them," Vril replied, her voice resonating with fear. "They're ignoring them. Their ships just push through, taking the damage, remaining operational despite conditions that should render any vessel inoperable." In the museum below, forgotten amid the crisis, the HSS Phoenix's systems noted the energy patterns of weapons fire. Its AI core processed the tactical data trickling through the facility's networks. Comparison algorithms ran against archived combat data. A match was found. The ship's power core began to cycle up. "We need to evacuate," Vril was saying. "Our models show they'll reach this sector within." The chamber's lighting flickered. Throughout the museum complex, systems began to fluctuate. "What now?" Zextal demanded of his staff. Power surged from the primitive ship display. A technician reported. It's activating." In the museum's central chamber, the containment field around the Phoenix dissipated. The ship that had been an object of mockery began to hum with power. Panels shifted. Weapons emerged from hidden recesses. The vessel's angular form, previously dismissed as crude, now looked distinctly predatory. Security forces rushed in, only to find themselves locked out by emergency bulkheads. Inside the ship, cryopods began their awakening sequences. The AI core, fully online for the first time in decades, initiated ship-wide revival protocols. In the council chamber, screens lit up with images from the museum. The assembled leaders watched in shock as the Phoenix's systems activated one by one. What they had thought were primitive backup systems turned out to be entire secondary and tertiary configurations coming online. Captain Sarah Chen of the HSS Phoenix opened her eyes to the soft blue light of her cryopod. The revival process had been perfect, another testament to the technology the aliens had dismissed as crude. She felt the familiar sensation of artificial gravity engaging as she stepped out, her muscles strong thanks to the pod's preservation systems. "Status report," she commanded. The ship's AI responded immediately. "Captain, we have maintained surveillance as ordered. The Nexus Collective is under attack by a Class 4 hostile force, matching profiles from the Descent War. Their defense systems are proving ineffective." Chen smiled grimly as she strode to the bridge, her crew emerging from their pods throughout the ship. Just like Command predicted, they'd encounter something their elegant technology couldn't handle, and they'd need our primitive solutions. The bridge came alive as her crew took their stations. The Phoenix's systems, far from being redundant, were exactly what was needed to fight an enemy that couldn't be stopped by conventional means. "Ma'am," her tactical officer reported, "the hostile force matches the Devourers we fought in the Descent War. Same tactics, brute force, overwhelming numbers, no concern for casualties. The same enemy that taught humanity that elegant solutions don't always work," Chen mused. "Sometimes you need armor that can take a hit, weapons that keep firing even when half the ship is gone, systems that can operate even under impossible conditions." In the council chamber above, the alien leaders watched in confusion as the Phoenix's primitive systems revealed their true purpose. The thick armor wasn't just for protection. It contained nanite repair systems far beyond their understanding. The oversized reactor wasn't inefficient. It was designed to power systems that could fight even when most of the ship was destroyed. "Captain," the AI reported, The Council is demanding an explanation. Chen touched a control, opening a channel to the chamber above. This is Captain Chen of the HSS Phoenix. We were stationed here because our analysts predicted this sector would be the first target when the Devourers returned. Your civilization was judged too dependent on technology that wouldn't work against this threat. She paused, allowing that to sink in. What you saw as primitive was actually designed specifically to counter the enemy you're now facing. And if you want to survive what's coming, you're going to need our help. The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. They hadn't been housing a relic. They'd been given a guardian, placed precisely where it would be needed most. And now it was time for the Phoenix to show them exactly why humanity designed ships the way they did. The Nexus Collective's command center was in chaos as they watched their elegant defensive line crumble before the Devourer assault. Their sleek ships, marvels of advanced technology, were being torn apart by enemies that simply absorbed their most sophisticated weapons. Captain Chen stood calmly at the Phoenix's tactical display, watching the battle unfold. Her crew worked with practiced efficiency, their movements precise despite decades in cryo-sleep. The ship's primitive systems were at full power, revealing capabilities that made the alien observers' eyes widen. Their command ship is breaking through Sector 7, reported Lieutenant Santos at Tactical. Collective vessels are attempting to withdraw. Show them how humans fight, Chen ordered. All hands, combat stations. Engineering, bring the kinetic drivers online. The Phoenix's engines roared to life, pushing the ship forward with acceleration that should have torn it apart. What the aliens had dismissed as inefficient engine design now demonstrated its true purpose, the ability to maneuver under conditions that would destroy more sophisticated vessels. First lesson. Chen transmitted to the watching collective leaders. Sometimes brute force beats elegance. The Phoenix charged straight into the Devourer formation. Its thick armor, layered with technologies the aliens hadn't even detected, shrugged off impacts that had destroyed the collective's finest ships. The vessel's crude weapons opened up, revealing why humans still used kinetic weapons in an age of energy beams. Mass drivers, full spread. Chen commanded. Show them why we stick with primitive ballistics. The Phoenix's main guns fired, launching projectiles at velocities that turned them into weapons of mass destruction. Unlike energy weapons that could be absorbed or deflected, these rounds carried enough kinetic energy to tear through multiple Devourer ships. The enemy vessels, adapted to defend against energy weapons, had no defense against simple physics. Impossible. Supreme Engineer Tex exclaimed, watching the battle. Those weapons, they're just throwing metal. Throwing metal at appreciable fractions of light speed, Chen corrected over the channel. No shield can deny conservation of momentum. Sometimes the old ways work best. The Phoenix executed maneuvers that seemed suicidal, deliberately taking hits that would have vaporized collective ships. But with each impact, the vessel's true sophistication became apparent. Damage control systems that had appeared redundant and wasteful proved capable of keeping the ship fighting even after taking damage that should have been fatal. Second lesson. Chen announced as the Phoenix's armor self-repaired under fire. Don't build ships that need to avoid damage. Build ships that can take it and keep fighting. The Devourers, facing a vessel designed specifically to counter their advantages, began to fall back. The Phoenix pursued relentlessly, its weapons never falling silent. When energy weapons were ineffective, it switched to kinetics. When one system was damaged, backups engaged seamlessly. We're not defenseless, Chen explained to the watching aliens. We're defensive. There's a difference. Your ships are designed never to be hit. Ours are designed to take the hit and hit back harder. In the command center, the collective leaders watched in amazement as their supposedly primitive guardians demonstrated warfare on a level they hadn't imagined. The Phoenix wasn't just fighting. It was teaching them, showing them what they'd missed in their pursuit of elegant solutions. Third lesson. Chen continued as the Phoenix executed another seemingly impossible maneuver. Technology isn't about complexity. It's about solving problems. Sometimes the simple solution is the best one. The ship's AI coordinated its systems with an efficiency that belied its supposed primitive nature. What the aliens had seen as crude computer systems were actually quantum processors designed to operate even under conditions that would destroy more sophisticated computers. Their formation is breaking, Santos reported. They're attempting to regroup at coordinates Mark 7. Not today, Chen replied. Show them the last lesson. Lieutenant, activate the TAOR systems. The Phoenix's hull began to glow as hidden emitters activated. What the aliens had thought was primitive radiation shielding revealed itself to be something far more sophisticated. A weapon that turned the ship's entire hull into a transmitter for focused electromagnetic pulses. Final lesson. Chen transmitted as the THOR system reached full power. Never judge by appearances. The pulse fired, and the nearby Devourer ships simply went dark, their systems overloaded by a weapon they'd never encountered. The Phoenix moved through their formation like a predator, its kinetic weapons ending the threat with brutal efficiency. As the last enemy ship fell silent, Chen opened a channel to the collective command center. That was just the advance force. The main fleet will be here within days. Now, shall we discuss how to prepare your ships for real warfare? The silence from the command center was broken only by Supreme Engineer Kex's quiet words. Perhaps we have much to learn about the true nature of advanced technology. Chen smiled. The real work was just beginning. The massive fabrication yards of the Nexus Collective, once dedicated to producing elegant ships of crystalline beauty, now hummed with a different purpose. Under Captain Chen's guidance, the Phoenix's engineering crews were teaching the aliens a new way of thinking about warfare. You're deliberately making them less sophisticated. Supreme Engineer Kex's mechanical eyes whirred in distress as he watched human engineers modify a collective destroyer. This goes against everything we believe about technological advancement. Commander Jack Torres, the Phoenix's chief engineer, wiped grease from his hands as he faced the alien engineer. No, we're making them more survivable. Look at this. He pointed to a holographic display of the modified ship. Your power distribution systems are beautiful, perfectly optimized, and that's the problem. One hit and the whole network fails. Around them, the massive shipyard was transforming. Collective ships were being retrofitted with what the aliens had once mocked as primitive technology. Thick armor plates covered elegant hulls. Redundant systems replaced optimized ones. Kinetic weapons supplemented energy beams. But the efficiency ratings, Kitex began. Will drop, Torres interrupted, and your survival rates will soar. The Devourers don't care about efficiency. They care about results. So should you. On the Phoenix's bridge, Captain Chen was conducting a different kind of lesson. The ship's combat simulator was running collective crews through scenarios they'd never considered. You're ordering us to deliberately take damage. The collective tactical officer's tendrils writhed in confusion. Sometimes taking a hit to your armor is better than depleting your shields trying to avoid it, Chen explained. Energy management isn't just about prevention. It's about choosing your battles. The simulation showed a collective ship, modified with human-inspired technology, absorbing hits that would have previously destroyed it. Its new kinetic weapons tore through Devourer defenses while its reinforced hull kept it in the fight. This is barbaric, someone muttered. This is survival, Chen corrected. The Devourers are coming with a fleet 10 times the size of what you saw before. We don't have time for elegant solutions. We need solutions that work. In orbit, the first wave of modified ships was already conducting battle drills. Their movements were less graceful now, but far more deadly. Where once they would have danced away from danger, now they stood their ground, their new armor shrugging off hits while their hybrid weapons, combining collective energy technology with human ballistic principles, demonstrated devastating effectiveness. Status report, Chen called out during a simulation review. Modified ships are showing 300% increase in combat survivability, her tactical officer reported. Collective crews are adapting to the new doctrine faster than expected. They're beginning to understand. Understanding had come at a cost. The collective's pride had taken a severe blow. But as their sensor networks reported the approaching Devourer fleet, pride became a luxury they couldn't afford. "We've modified 30% of their combat fleet," Torres reported during the evening briefing. "Another 40% are in process. The remaining ships won't be ready before the Devourers arrive. They'll have to learn in combat," Chen decided. "At least the modified ships can protect the others while they retreat and regroup." A junior officer rushed onto the bridge. "Captain, long-range sensors detect the Devourer fleet has changed course. They're accelerating. Time to arrival is now less than 24 hours. Chen's expression hardened. Earlier than expected. They must have detected our preparations. She activated the fleet-wide channel. "All ships, this is Captain Chen. The enemy has forced our hand. As of this moment, your training period is over. This is no longer an exercise." Throughout the collective fleet, crews scrambled to battle stations. Modified ships took their positions at the front of the formation, their new armor gleaming dully against the starfield. Behind them, unmodified ships formed up in support positions, their crews watching nervously as the enemy approached. "Remember your training," Chen broadcast. "Trust your ships. Trust the modifications. Most importantly, trust yourselves. You're about to learn that true advancement isn't about having the most elegant solution. It's about having the right solution." The Phoenix took its position at the head of the fleet. Its scared hull and angular form no longer drew derision from the collective crews. Now they saw it for what it was, a weapon designed not to avoid war's horror, but to face it and emerge victorious. "All ships, battle stations," Chen ordered. "Show them what humanity has taught you. Show them that sometimes the old ways, the hard ways, are the right ways." The collective fleet formed up behind the Phoenix, a strange hybrid of elegant alien design and human pragmatism. They were about to demonstrate that true sophistication wasn't about complexity, it was about effectiveness. And in the darkness of space ahead, the Devourer fleet approached, about to learn that their prey had grown new teeth. Space itself seemed to burn as the combined human collective fleet engaged the Devourer armada. The Phoenix led the charge, its primitive systems proving their worth as it smashed through the enemy's front line. Behind it, modified collective ships followed, their new hybrid designs transforming the battlefield into a killing ground. Multiple Devourer capital ships breaking formation, Lieutenant Santos reported from Tactical. "They're not used to prey that fights back effectively." Captain Chen watched as her lessons played out across the battlefield. Collective ships, once programmed to retreat at the first sign of damage, now stood their ground. Their new armor absorbed punishment while their hybrid weapons, elegant energy weapons married to brutal kinetic delivery systems, tore through Devourer defenses. "Supreme Engineer Ktex," Chen called over the command channel. "Status of the modified fleet." Kitex's voice crackled with an emotion that his species rarely showed, excitement. "Beyond all projected parameters, Captain. Our ships are surviving hits that would have previously destroyed them instantly. The hybrid weapons are most effective." The battle unfolded like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Collective vessels, their hulls reinforced with human-designed armor, deliberately took hits to protect their unmodified companions. Their weapons alternated between sophisticated energy beams and devastating kinetic strikes, overwhelming the Devourer's adaptive defenses. "They're starting to understand," Commander Torres observed from engineering. "Look at how they're using the modifications." He was right. The collective crews were no longer simply following human doctrine. They were adapting it, combining it with their own technological expertise. Ships would use their energy weapons to create openings, then exploit them with kinetic strikes. Others deliberately took damage on their reinforced sections to maneuver into better firing positions. "Enemy flagship detected," Santos announced. "They're attempting to coordinate a counterattack." Chen smiled grimly. "Show them the final modification. All ships, execute pattern Phoenix." The modified collective ships moved into formation around the Phoenix. What appeared to be a defensive formation was actually something else, a carefully positioned array of energy transmitters and receivers. TUR system linking with collective ships. Torres reported. Energy synchronization at 95% and rising. The Phoenix's hull began to glow, but this time it wasn't acting alone. The modified collective ships added their power to the system, their own hulls lighting up in sequence. What had been a powerful electromagnetic pulse weapon was now something more, a combination of human engineering and collective energy manipulation technology. Last lesson. Chen broadcast on all frequencies. True advancement comes from cooperation, not isolation. The combined TUR system fired. A wave of electromagnetic energy, focused and amplified by collective technology, swept through the Devourer fleet. Ships went dark by the dozens, their systems overloaded by an attack that bypassed all their defenses. In their wake, kinetic weapons from the combined fleet finished what the pulse had started. The remaining Devourer ships attempted to retreat, but they found themselves pursued by vessels that no longer feared damage. The modified collective ships, their crews now confident in their ship's durability, pressed the attack relentlessly. Hours later, as cleanup operations began, Captain Chen stood in the collective's Grand Assembly Hall. The chamber, once a place where her ship had been mocked, now fell silent as she addressed the gathered representatives. "You asked me why humanity designed ships the way we did," she began. "Now you know. We built them not to avoid warfare's horror, but to endure it. Not to prevent damage, but to survive it. Not to demonstrate our sophistication, but to ensure our survival." She gestured to the holographic display showing the modified collective ships. "But today showed us something more. Your technology, combined with our philosophy, created something greater than either of us had before. You taught us that elegance has its place. We taught you that durability has its value." Supreme Engineer Ktex stepped forward, his mechanical eyes focusing on the assembly. "The Phoenix was never a relic," he announced. "It was a teacher, waiting for us to be ready to learn. And what we learned may have saved our civilization. So what happens now?" Someone called from the assembly. Chen smiled. "Now we continue to learn from each other. Your ships will keep some of their elegance, but they'll never again sacrifice survivability for style. And perhaps we humans can learn to add some sophistication to our durability." The Phoenix would remain with the collective, not as a museum piece, but as a symbol of a new era. Its primitive design had taught an advanced civilization that true sophistication lay not in complexity, but in effectiveness. That sometimes the old ways, the hard ways, were the right ways. And in shipyards throughout collective space, a new generation of vessels took shape, ships that combined the best of both civilizations. Beautiful yet brutal, elegant yet enduring, sophisticated yet survivable. They called them Phoenix-class ships, and the galaxy would never be the same. First contact and misconceptions. The vastness of space had always been humanity's greatest frontier, a dark, endless canvas dotted with stars and mysteries. For centuries, humans had gazed up at the night sky, wondering if they were alone. When they finally launched beyond their solar system, they discovered they weren't. The galaxy was teeming with intelligent life, civilizations far older and more advanced than their own. But rather than the warm welcome they had hoped for, humanity found themselves regarded as little more than cosmic infants, primitive, inconsequential, and ultimately dismissible. The Galactic Concord, an alliance of the 12 most powerful species in the known galaxy, had observed Earth's development for decades. They watched as humans struggled with their internal conflicts, environmental challenges, and technological limitations. The Concord's members, some with histories spanning tens of thousands of years, looked upon humanity with a mixture of amusement and condescension. To them, Earth was just another young species, likely to destroy itself before ever becoming relevant in galactic affairs. Admiral Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of the TDF Prometheus, Earth's first true deep space warship, watching as her crew performed final system checks. The vessel represented humanity's ultimate achievement, the culmination of decades of secret research, reverse engineering from recovered alien technology, and human innovation. The Prometheus wasn't just a ship, it was humanity's statement to the stars. "Admiral, all systems are showing green," reported Commander Jackson Chen, her executive officer. "The quantum drive is fully operational and weapons systems are at 100%. Elena nodded, her dark eyes reflecting the holographic displays floating around the command center. "What about the Veil system?" "Operational but untested in real-world conditions," Chen replied. "Though the simulations are promising." The Veil system was perhaps the Prometheus's most closely guarded secret, a revolutionary cloaking and masking technology that didn't just hide the ship from visual detection, but also concealed its true capabilities. To outside scans, the Prometheus would appear far less advanced than it actually was, a clever deception that had been Elena's brainchild. "Good," Elena said. "Humanity needs every advantage it can get. The Galactic Concord has underestimated us for too long." Earth's first official contact with the Galactic Concord had occurred 15 years earlier, a moment that was supposed to be triumphant for humanity, but had instead been humiliating. The Concord's representatives had barely acknowledged Earth's achievements, dismissing their technological progress as crude and primitive. They had offered guidance that came with strings attached, restrictions on development, territorial limitations, and resource quotas. Humanity would be allowed to join the galactic community, but only as servants, not equals. Earth's united government, the Terran Alliance, had outwardly accepted these terms, while secretly accelerating their military and technological development. The Prometheus was the culmination of this hidden effort, a vessel designed to protect Earth's independence if diplomacy failed. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from Terran Command," Chen reported. "The Aldarian delegation is requesting a diplomatic meeting. They're sending a representative ship to these coordinates." Elena's expression darkened. Of all the Concord species, the Aldarians were perhaps the most dismissive of humanity. Tall, slender beings with iridescent skin and eyes that reflected the evolutionary advantage of a binary star system, they'd wielded tremendous influence within the Concord. They were also known for their technological supremacy and their belief that younger species should know their place. "Inform command will be ready," Elena said. "And Chen, activate the Veil. Let's show our guests exactly what they expect to see. Nothing more, nothing less." As the Prometheus prepared for its diplomatic encounter, elsewhere in the vast expanse of space, aboard the Aldarian flagship Celestial Judgment, High Commander Zelix reviewed the reports on the approaching human vessel. "These humans are becoming more presumptuous," he said, his voice carrying the melodic cadence typical of his species. "They believe a single warship grants them standing." Strategic Analyst Verix, his second in command, nodded in agreement. "Their technology is rudimentary at best. Our preliminary scans indicate conventional propulsion, basic shield capabilities, and weaponry that would barely scratch our outer defenses." Zalix's mouth curled into what passed for a smile among his kind. "Perhaps we should remind them of their place. The Terran Alliance needs to understand that patience with their development has limits." "The Concord has been generous in allowing them even this much autonomy," Verix agreed. "Many believe we should have established direct oversight decades ago." The Aldarians had been watching Earth with particular interest. Unlike other Concord species who viewed humans with mere indifference, the Aldarians saw potential, not in humans themselves, but in Earth's resource-rich solar system. The planet's position near several strategic hyperspace lanes made it valuable real estate. If humans proved too independent-minded, there were contingency plans to establish a more compliant government. The Celestial Judgment was accompanied by 4 battle cruisers, an excessive show of force for a diplomatic meeting, but one that Zelix felt necessary to convey the proper message. The humans needed to understand that resistance to Concord directives would not be tolerated. When the Prometheus arrived at the designated coordinates, the Aldarian vessels were already waiting. The difference in size alone was intimidating. The Celestial Judgment was nearly 3 times the length of the human warship, its sleek, crystalline hull reflecting the light of distant stars. "They're hailing us, Admiral," reported Lieutenant Amara King, the communications officer. "On screen," Elena ordered, squaring her shoulders. The view screen flickered to life, revealing High Commander Zalex. His elongated features regarded Elena with barely concealed disdain. "Admiral Vasquez," he began, his voice translated into perfect English. "I trust you understand the honor being bestowed upon you. The hegemony rarely grants private audience to developing species." Elena maintained her composure, years of diplomatic training evident in her measured response. "High Commander, the Terran Alliance appreciates the opportunity for dialogue. I believe our meeting agenda includes discussion of the recent border incidents near Proxima Centauri." Zalex waved a long-fingered hand dismissively. "A minor misunderstanding. Your colonists were establishing presence in an area already designated for Concord development. We simply redirected them to more appropriate locations." Elena knew what redirected meant. 3 Earth vessels had been disabled, their crews forced to evacuate to a barren moon while their ships were impounded. It had taken weeks to rescue them. "The Terran Alliance considers Proxima Centauri to be within humanity's sovereign territory," Elena said firmly, "as outlined in the settlement agreement of 2156. Zalex's eyes narrowed. "Agreements evolve as circumstances change. Admiral, the Concord has determined that Proxima Centauri holds resources vital to galactic stability. Your understanding of this matter would be appreciated." The implied threat was clear. The Aldarians weren't requesting. They were informing. "I'll convey your position to Terran Command," Elena replied diplomatically. "However, I must emphasize that Earth considers its colonial rights non-negotiable." Zalex studied her for a moment, then said, "Perhaps we should continue this discussion in person. I invite you to shuttle across to the Celestial Judgment. A proper diplomatic environment might foster better understanding." Elena recognized the tactic. Removing her from her command center would place her at a psychological disadvantage. "I appreciate the invitation, but protocol dictates that as the hosting vessel, the Prometheus would be the appropriate venue." A flicker of annoyance crossed Zalex's features. "Very well. I shall grace your vessel with my presence in 1 hour. I trust your accommodations will be adequate." The transmission ended, and Elena let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "They're scanning us," Chen reported. "Standard protocols, but they're being thorough." "Let the veil do its work," Elena replied. "Show them exactly what they expect. Nothing more." The veil system was already operating at full capacity, presenting the Aldarians with sensor readings that confirmed their preconceptions. Conventional fusion drives, basic defensive shields, and weapon systems that, while respectable for a young species, posed no threat to advanced Concord vessels. What the Aldarians couldn't detect was the quantum drive capable of speeds that would astonish them, the multiphasic shield technology that could withstand even the most sophisticated energy weapons, or the gravitational displacement system that could manipulate the space-time fabric around the ship. The Prometheus was a wolf in sheep's clothing, and Elena intended to keep it that way, at least for now. When High Commander Zalex arrived with his delegation, his disdain was palpable. He moved through the Prometheus's corridors with the air of a superior being forced to endure primitive surroundings. "Your vessel is quaint," he remarked to Elena as they walked toward the conference room. "Though I'm surprised you've managed to stabilize your matter conversion technology, even at this basic level." Elena smiled politely. "We're quick learners, High Commander." The diplomatic meeting went exactly as Elena had expected. The Aldarians made demands thinly disguised as suggestions, spoke of galactic stability when they meant Concord control, and repeatedly emphasized humanity's junior status in interstellar affairs. "The Concord has decided," Zalex finally stated, "that Earth's expansion must be contained to its immediate solar system until your species has demonstrated the necessary maturity. The colonies at Proxima Centauri will be administered by the Concord, with human participation allowed under supervision." Elena maintained her diplomatic facade. And if the Terran Alliance disagrees with this decision? Zalix's expression hardened. Then the Concord would be forced to reconsider humanity's readiness for galactic citizenship altogether. I'm sure you understand the implications. The threat hung in the air between them. The implications were clear: resist, and face possible quarantine or worse. I will relay your message to Terran Command, Elena said carefully, though I must emphasize that unilateral action against sovereign human territories would be considered an act of aggression. Zelix stood, towering over the humans. You mistake your position, Admiral. The Concord does not negotiate with developing species, it guides them. You would do well to remember that. After the Aldarians departed, Elena received an encrypted transmission from Terran Command. Containage, YNCY, Aurora authorized. Proceed at your discretion. Elena looked at Chen, her expression grim. They're going to make an example of us. Prepare the ship for combat scenarios. Maintain the veil until my command. Sure enough, within hours, the Aldarian vessels had taken up positions around the Prometheus, effectively surrounding it. They're hailing us again, reported Lieutenant King. Elena nodded. On screen, Zelix's face appeared, no longer maintaining even the pretense of diplomatic courtesy. Admiral Vasquez, the Concord has determined that humanity requires more direct guidance. Your vessel will power down all systems and prepare to be boarded. A Concord Oversight Committee will be established on Earth to ensure compliance with galactic regulations. Elena's voice was calm, betraying none of the anger she felt. And if we refuse? Zalix's expression was cold. Then your vessel will be disabled, and the Oversight Committee will be established regardless. The choice is yours, Admiral. Comply with dignity or be compelled by force. Elena's eyes locked with his. We'll need time to consider your proposal. You have 1 hour, Zalix replied before terminating the transmission. Tactical assessment, Elena asked, turning to her weapons officer. Lieutenant Commander Razadilier shook his head. 5 against 1, and they outgun us severely. At least, that's what they believe. With the veil active, they think our shields and weapons are generations behind theirs. Elena smiled grimly. And what's the reality? Even odds at worst, Delir replied. The Prometheus was built to fight outside its weight class. Elena looked around at her crew, men and women who represented humanity's finest. The Aldarians have scanned our ship and believe they know what we're capable of. They're about to learn how dangerous assumptions can be. As the deadline approached, the Prometheus's true capabilities remained hidden behind the veil. The Aldarians had no idea what they were truly facing, or that humanity had been preparing for this confrontation for years. All hands, battle stations, Elena ordered. It's time to show the galaxy what humanity is really made of. The Aldarian vessels tightened their formation around the Prometheus, preparing to enforce their ultimatum. What they didn't realize was that they weren't facing a primitive warship commanded by a species that would meekly accept subjugation. They were facing humanity, resourceful, determined, and infinitely more dangerous than they could possibly imagine. Revelations and reckoning. As the deadline approached, High Commander Zalix stood on the command deck of the Celestial Judgment, watching the holographic display of the human warship. His confidence was absolute. The Aldarian fleet had successfully contained far more advanced species in the past. These humans, barely a century into their interstellar development, posed no significant challenge. Begin another deep scan, Zalix ordered. I want to know every weakness in their defenses before we disable them. Strategic Analyst Varix complied, initiating the Aldarians' most sophisticated scanning technology, capable of penetrating almost any known shielding. The scan would map every system, every power conduit, and every potential vulnerability of the human vessel. Scan commencing, High Commander. Results will be available in... Varix's voice faltered as the first readings appeared on his console. He frowned, tapping the controls again. This cannot be correct. Zelix turned, irritation flashing across his features. Explain. The readings. They're changing, Varric said, confusion evident in his voice. The initial scan showed conventional systems, but the deeper scan is revealing something else entirely. On the Prometheus, Elena watched the countdown timer. They're scanning us again, Commander Chen reported. This time they're using their penetrating frequencies. Perfect, Elena replied. Disengage the veil on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. Throughout the Prometheus, systems that had been masked suddenly revealed themselves to the Aldarian scanners. It was like a veil being lifted, exposing the true nature of the human warship. On the celestial judgment, alarms began to sound as the scan results flooded in. Varric's eyes widened in disbelief. High Commander, the human vessel. It's not what we thought. The power readings are impossible. Zelix moved swiftly to the console, his composure slipping as he studied the data. This cannot be. Their drive system. Is that a quantum displacement matrix? And those weapon emplacements, their phase-shifted antimatter projectors. The human ship was hiding its true capabilities, Varric said, his voice barely above a whisper. Everything we detected before was a deception. Zelix's mind raced. Quantum displacement was technology that even the Aldarians were still perfecting. Phase-shifted antimatter weaponry was theoretical in Concord research circles. The implications were staggering. Either the humans had made technological leaps that should have taken centuries, or they've had help, Zelix hissed. Some faction within the Concord must have provided them with advanced technology. But even as he said it, Zelix knew it wasn't true. The design signatures were uniquely human, ingenious adaptations and innovations that bore the unmistakable mark of human thinking. They hadn't copied advanced technology. They had developed it themselves, in ways the Aldarians hadn't anticipated. High Commander, Varric reported, his voice trained. I'm detecting unusual energy buildups throughout their hull. Their shield configuration is unlike anything in our database. Zelix felt the first stirrings of uncertainty, an emotion he had rarely experienced in his long career. He had commanded fleets against some of the most formidable forces in the galaxy, always with the confidence that Aldarian technological superiority would prevail. Now, facing this single human vessel, that confidence was evaporating. Open a channel to the human ship, he ordered, struggling to maintain his authoritative demeanor. On the Prometheus, Elena received the incoming communication with a grim smile. Right on schedule, she murmured before nodding to Lieutenant King to accept the transmission. Zelix's image appeared, his composure noticeably strained. Admiral Vasquez, it seems there has been a misunderstanding regarding your vessel's capabilities. No misunderstanding, High Commander, Elena replied coolly. You saw exactly what we wanted you to see. The Concord does not appreciate deception, Zelix said, an edge of warning in his voice despite his evident unease. And humanity does not appreciate threats against our sovereignty, Elena countered. The Prometheus represents a new chapter in human development, one where we will no longer be dismissed or dictated to. Zelix's eyes narrowed. Impressive as your vessel may be, Admiral, you are still outnumbered. One advanced ship cannot stand against the might of the Aldarian fleet. Elena's smile didn't reach her eyes. Are you certain of that, High Commander? Your scans have revealed some of our capabilities, but I assure you, there's much more you haven't discovered. It was a bluff, but one delivered with such conviction that doubt flickered across Zelix's features. The truth was that while the Prometheus was indeed advanced, it was still one ship against 5. However, Elena had one more card to play, the ingenuity that had always been humanity's greatest strength. You have 30 minutes to withdraw your demands and remove your vessels from Terran space, Elena stated firmly. After that, we will consider your actions an act of war against the Terran Alliance. Zelix's expression hardened. You are overplaying your hand. Admiral, even with your unexpected advantages, You cannot hope to prevail against us." Commander Chen looked concerned. "The Lightbringer protocol hasn't been field tested, Admiral. The risks are considerable," Elena finished for him. "But so are the stakes. Humanity cannot afford to show weakness now." In the tense minutes that followed, the Prometheus's crew worked with practiced efficiency, preparing systems that had never been used outside of simulations. The ship's quantum core, the heart of both its propulsion and weapon systems, began to pulse with increasing intensity. On the Celestial Judgment, the Eldarian command staff was in disarray. The scan data had been distributed to their top analysts, who were struggling to make sense of the human vessel's capabilities. "Their power generation exceeds our models by a factor of 3, reported the chief engineer. "And their shield harmonics are shifting in patterns our weapons may not be able to penetrate effectively." "Their weapons?" Zalix demanded. "Theoretically capable of bypassing our primary defenses," came the disturbing reply. "Our simulations suggest they could disable or destroy 2 of our vessels before we overwhelm them. 2 ships out of 5 against a single human vessel. It was unprecedented in Zalix's experience. Even species with centuries more development than humanity had fallen quickly to Eldarian military superiority. They're bluffing, Zalix decided, though without his earlier certainty. They revealed their capabilities to intimidate us, hoping we would withdraw without conflict. And if they're not bluffing? Varix asked quietly. Then we will still prevail through superior numbers and experience, Zalix stated. Prepare all ships for coordinated attack pattern Epsilon. Target their propulsion systems first. I want that ship disabled, not destroyed. As the Eldarian fleet moved into attack formation, Elena watched the tactical display with practiced calm. They're positioning for a standard containment assault, Lieutenant Commander Delir reported. Targeting solutions suggest they'll focus on our engines. Elena nodded. Predictable. They want to capture the Prometheus intact. Study our technology. Lightbringer is ready, Admiral, Chen reported. On your command. Elena took a deep breath. What they were about to attempt had never been done before. A theoretical application of quantum physics that had emerged from Earth's best scientific minds, working in concert with the practical needs of space combat. All hands, secure for Lightbringer protocol, she ordered. Throughout the Prometheus, crew members braced themselves for what was to come. The Eldarian vessels launched their attack simultaneously, a precisely coordinated barrage of energy weapons designed to overwhelm and disable the human ship's engines. Under normal circumstances, even with advanced shielding, such an assault would have been devastating. But these were not normal circumstances. Execute Lightbringer, Elena commanded. The Prometheus's quantum core surged, channeling energy in ways that defied conventional physics. For a brief, disorienting moment, the space around the human vessel seemed to bend and distort. Then, impossibly, the Prometheus was no longer where it had been. On the Celestial Judgment, chaos erupted on the command deck. They've vanished, shouted the sensor officer. No, wait. There. Before he could finish, the Prometheus reappeared, directly behind the rearmost Eldarian vessel. The human warship's weapons fired, not at the engines or weapon systems, but at precisely calculated points along the Eldarian cruiser's hull. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Eldarian ship didn't explode or break apart. Instead, its systems simply went dark, powerless, and adrift in space. What just happened? Zalix demanded, shock evident in his voice. They created a localized quantum field displacement, the science officer explained, his voice trembling with disbelief. They effectively teleported their entire ship. And their weapons, they generated some kind of targeted EMP effect that bypassed our shielding completely. Before Zalix could process this information, the Prometheus vanished again, reappearing near another Eldarian vessel. The same precision attack followed, with identical results. A second Eldarian cruiser rendered powerless in seconds. Impossible, Zalix whispered. The ability to create controlled quantum displacements at the scale of an entire warship was beyond even theoretical Alderian science. The precision targeting that allowed the humans to disable rather than destroy their opponents spoke of weapons technology that shouldn't exist for a species at their development stage. The remaining Alderian vessels attempted to regroup, but the Prometheus continued its impossible maneuver, appearing and disappearing across the battlefield with devastating effect. Within minutes, 4 of the 5 Alderian ships had been neutralized, leaving only the Celestial Judgment facing the human vessel. The Prometheus materialized directly in front of the Alderian flagship, its weapons primed but not firing. A communication request came through, which Zelix, still reeling from the rapid defeat of his fleet, automatically accepted. Admiral Vasquez's face appeared on the screen, showing no signs of the strain such incredible maneuvers must have placed on her ship and crew. Your fleet has been disabled, High Commander. Their life support systems remain functional, but they will require assistance to restore power. Zelix struggled to maintain his dignity in the face of such a comprehensive defeat. How is this possible? Your species has been underestimated. Elena finished for him. A common mistake, and one the Galactic Concord will not make again. She leaned forward slightly, her expression intense. Let me be absolutely clear, High Commander. Humanity will not be contained. We will not be controlled. We have no desire for conflict with the Concord, but we will defend our sovereignty without hesitation. Zelix found himself at a loss for words. A diplomatic first in his long career. The implications of what had just occurred would reverberate throughout the Concord. A young species, thought to be manageable and primitive, had just demonstrated technology and tactical brilliance that rivaled or exceeded the Concord's most advanced members. What are your terms? He finally asked, the words bitter in his mouth. Recognition of Terran sovereignty over all our colonial territories, including Proxima Centauri, Elena stated firmly. A non-aggression pact between the Terran Alliance and the Concord, and formal acknowledgement of humanity as equals in galactic affairs, not as subordinates to be guided. Zelix knew he had no choice. With 4 of his vessels disabled and the Prometheus demonstrating capabilities that could easily overwhelm his flagship, resistance was futile. More importantly, the strategic landscape had fundamentally changed. The humans could not be dismissed or easily subjugated. They had earned their place at the table through innovation and resolve. I will convey your terms to the Concord Council, Zelix said stiffly. But I am authorized to establish a provisional agreement to these conditions, pending formal ratification. Elena nodded. The Terran Alliance accepts this provisional agreement. We will assist in restoring power to your disabled vessels as a gesture of good faith. As the diplomatic formalities concluded, Elena turned to her crew. The Lightbringer Protocol, the quantum displacement system that had allowed them to effectively teleport short distances in combat, had taken a severe toll on the Prometheus's systems. The ship would need extensive repairs before it could attempt such maneuvers again. But the gamble had paid off spectacularly. Send a message to Terran Command, Elena ordered. Operation Aurora successful. The Concord has been educated. In the days and weeks that followed, the balance of power in the galaxy underwent a subtle but profound shift. The story of how a single human warship had defeated an Alderian battle group spread rapidly through Concord space. Species that had previously dismissed humanity began to reconsider their assessments. Some felt unease at the rapid human advancement. Others saw potential allies against the Concord's sometimes heavy-handed governance. The Alderians, for their part, launched a comprehensive review of human development. Their analysts were stunned to discover that the technological innovations aboard the Prometheus weren't anomalies, but part of a broader pattern of human ingenuity. Humans didn't develop technology linearly like most species. They made intuitive leaps, found unexpected connections between disparate fields, and adapted with remarkable speed to new challenges. 3 months after the encounter, Zelix found himself in the unusual position of addressing the Concord Council, not as a conqueror reporting success, but as a witness testifying to a significant miscalculation. "We have fundamentally misjudged the humans," he concluded after presenting his detailed analysis. "Their thinking is different. They accomplish in decades what takes other species centuries. And most concerning of all, they excel at warfare and crisis response in ways that defy conventional strategic doctrine." An elder council member leaned forward. "Are you suggesting that humans pose a threat to the Concord, High Commander?" Zilix considered the question carefully. "I am suggesting that humanity is a force we can no longer afford to underestimate. Whether they become allies or adversaries depends largely on how we choose to engage with them now." But Elena took little satisfaction in the adulation. She knew better than most that the encounter could have ended very differently. The Prometheus's victory had been as much about surprise and psychological impact as about technological superiority. Now that the Concord knew what humans were capable of, future confrontations would be far more dangerous. "We've earned our place at the table," she told the Terran Alliance Council during her debriefing. "But we've also painted a target on our backs. Some within the Concord will see us as upstarts to be put in our place. Others will fear our potential and seek to contain us through other means." "Then what do you recommend, Admiral?" asked the Alliance President. Elena's response was immediate and certain. "We build, we innovate, we explore, and most importantly, we forge alliances. There are species within the Concord who chafe under Eldarian influence, species who might welcome a partner that isn't afraid to challenge the status quo." The President nodded slowly. "And the Prometheus?" "Needs upgrades," Elena replied with a hint of a smile. "What we've demonstrated is only the beginning of what humanity can achieve." 6 months later, as the Prometheus prepared for its next mission, this time as an official diplomatic vessel of the newly recognized Terran Alliance, Elena stood once again on the observation deck, watching the stars. The galaxy had changed because humans had refused to accept limitations imposed by others. They had demonstrated a truth that the Concord was still struggling to accept. Never underestimate a species that had spent its entire history overcoming impossible odds. As the Prometheus's quantum drive engaged, sending the ship streaking toward distant stars, Elena reflected on the message they had sent to the galaxy. Humanity was ready to take its place among the stars, not as subordinates, but as equals. Not through aggression, but through ingenuity and determination. The Eldarians had scanned a human warship and discovered something that shattered their beliefs. They had discovered humanity's indomitable spirit, the one force in the universe that could never be accurately measured or predicted. And in doing so, they had learned the lesson that countless others throughout human history had learned before them. Never tell humans what they cannot do. They'll prove you wrong every time.